I feel the Spirit moving in me. I feel the Spirit moving in me.
Aloha! Carlos and John were at Heaven's Gate waiting to talk to St. Peter. And Carlos says, "How did you get here?" And John says, "Hypothermia. How about you?" And Carlos says, "Oh, you won't believe it. I was sure my wife was cheating on me, so I came home early one day, hoping to find that guy. And I was angry, and I accused my wife of cheating on me and unfaithfulness. And I looked at the whole house, but I couldn't find him. And I just got so upset that I had a heart attack." And John says, "Oh man, if you had checked the walk-in freezer, we'd both still be alive." I love that joke. Anger is part of our wiring. It's part of our survival technique. And anger, if not dealt with in a mindful and spiritual way, can be very destructive. So how do we shift out of using our anger in such a way that it's destructive to us, to using our anger in a productive way, in a spiritual way? You know, anger can be a fabulous device for evolving consciousness. And some people believe that we can really sort of look at or gauge our level of spiritual awareness or our evolutionary consciousness based on how we deal with anger. And I'd like to start off with this parable. It's the parable of the prickly porcupines. It was the coldest winter ever. So cold that many porcupines were freezing to death. In an effort to save themselves from this icy fate, the porcupines decided to gather together to fend off the chill. They huddled close to each other, covered and protected from the elements and warmed by their collective bodies. But their prickly quills proved to be a bit of a problem in close proximity. They poked and stabbed each other, wounding their closest companions. The warmth was wonderful, but the mutual needling became increasingly uncomfortable. Eventually, they began to distance themselves from one another, scattering throughout the forest, only to end up, many of them, getting frozen and dying. It soon became clear that they'd have to choose between solitary deaths in the forest or the prickling that being close to each other caused. And they wisely decided to huddle together. And they learned to live with the little wounds caused by the close relationship with their fellows. In order to benefit from the collective heat, they had to tolerate a few pokes from time to time in order to survive. So what is the moral of the story? You know, it's kind of like for us, we get to, as human beings, as we become close and intimate with each other, we get to poke each other from time to time. You ever notice? And we also get to put up with the pokes that we receive from other people. You know, learning to cope with the tiny pokes is a great survival strategy, and it's also a way of evolving ourselves spiritually. A little needling can do a good thing. There's what makes me think of when somebody pokes you or hurts you or insults you, how do you react? Do you get angry and fight back? Do you get defensive? Do you pull within? Do you speak out? Do you act out your anger? There's a there's a cartoon with a couple of dogs in it. One of the dogs is a therapist, and the other dog is a patient lying on the couch. And the dog on the couch says, "I bark at everything. You can't go wrong that way." Ever known people like that who seem to bark at everything? Once we get in this loop of anger and barking, sometimes it's hard to get out of that loop. Someone writes, "My grandmother was a very tough woman. She's buried 3 husbands, and 2 of them were napping. She just doesn't have any regrets and doesn't apologize." So, as we're on this journey of evolving consciousness, we start to notice our patterns, right? And I think that's how we learn on this path, is by first becoming aware of the things that challenge us and look to discover, how can we have a breakthrough? How can we take this challenging event and turn it into an awakening? Anger lets us know that we have an unmet need. It lets us know that we have hit an obstacle that offers us the possibility for a breakthrough. And sometimes our anger can get hijacked and become so much a part of our system and so much a part of our thinking. And I'm sure people like that who just constantly are in a state of anger and reacting from that anger. And we certainly don't want to get there. And that's why we want to be aware of how we are expressing our anger, and are we using it for our spiritual evolvement. And we can do that by noticing when we get anger, and by pausing to investigate what is underneath the anger, right? What is the unmet need or needs that's underneath the anger that we're feeling? And then once we discover that unmet need, we can decide how to constructively and sometimes compassionately deal with that anger. Because I don't know about you, what I've noticed is that when I get angry, I often want to project my anger out here and blame somebody else or something else for the way that I'm feeling. But if I can really go within and look at the anger and investigate it, I can discover what is at the root of the anger. What is the unmet need that the anger is showing to me? The truth of it is, and I'm sure it's not new to you, is that we understand that we are 100% responsible for our experiences. And a lot of people have difficulty with that because they want to blame somebody else for their experience. But the truth is, we are 100% responsible for how we experience life. So, we can ask ourselves, how do we experience anger? What does that look like? And I'll give you some examples, and maybe you can find some of the ways that you do or have experienced anger. And the first one is lashing out. This is probably one of the most common ways that we can find ourselves. We get defensive and then we lash out at somebody else and try and hurt somebody else because we're angry. And someone said, if you speak when you're angry, you will make the best speech you will ever regret. I love that. Ever found yourself there? I know I can name numerous times in my life when I've got to that place where I'm like, I just got to say something, right? And it feels good for about that long, and you get it out, and you get angry at somebody, and you say some things that you wish you hadn't said later. So that's kind of what we're looking at here, is how can we investigate this anger and stop it before we express it. Another way that we can express our anger is to internalize it, right? To hold on to it, to sort of self-destruct. And maybe you've noticed it in your life, and I've seen it in past relationships where I didn't express something, my unmet need, and I held on to it, and eventually it caused me to self-destruct and the relationship to self-destruct because it got internalized instead of experienced, researched, and expressed. Another thing that we can do is to be passive aggressive, right? To withhold our affection, or use indirect put downs, or to judge other people. Or we can punish other people by trying to intimidate them, or absolutely intimidating them by gossiping about them or slandering them. You know, and the challenge with all of these things is, of course, that we are putting our attention someplace other than really getting underneath and at the root of what the anger is. You know, to look at what is the unmet need that is beneath the anger. And so I wonder, how has anger worked for you? You might look back at your life in this moment and go, how has it worked? Has it been effective, or have you, I know if I look myself back at times that I've been angry, I discover that, my anger caused me to be defensive, or if I presented somebody else with the fact that I was angry at them, they got defensive. And so it's interesting, it kind of skirted around the issue, and the unmet needs never got discovered. The Buddha said, getting angry with another person is like throwing hot coals with both hands, with bare hands, and both people get burnt. Oh, I love that. And so that's what we're trying to avoid, and that is where the topic of this talk came from. Gandhi said something very similar. He said, an eye for an eye makes everybody blind. And I think it's time that we open our eyes, yes, and discover what is it that is beneath the anger that wants to be discovered. And I know that once we discover that, we'll be more connected with ourselves and with other people as well. A great master said to his disciples, why do we shout when we are angry? And his disciples kind of wrestled with the question, and they couldn't figure out. And finally the master went on and he said, when two people are angry with each other, their hearts are distanced from each other. So to cover the distance, they shout to be heard. And then he went on to say, what happens when two people fall in love? They don't shout at each other, but they talk very softly. Why? Because their hearts are very close, and the distance between them is very small. I love that. So when we are angry, it's because there's an unmet need that we can discover. It's like our anger is an opportunity to take a deeper look at what's really going on, what really is beneath the surface that wants to come out and be expressed. I've had two churches in St. Louis, Missouri. And at one of my churches was a man that I became really good friends with. And he had a boat, and we would go out on the Missouri River and stop at a sand dune and get out of the boat and play in the water and just have a great time. We had a lot of fun together on the river. And my friend Mike had some great ideas for fundraising. And he was sharing these ideas with me one day, and I said, "Wow, those are great ideas. You should bring those to the board and let's discuss them." And so we agreed on a date. We called for a special board meeting, and the day of the meeting, Mike called me and said, "Oh, Blaine, I'm so sorry. I'm not feeling well today. I'm sorry I can't make the board meeting. So I was disappointed, went to the meeting, and the board and I came up with some ideas for fundraising, and we had a good meeting. And then the following week, I heard that Mike had gone fishing with another friend the day of the board meeting. And so the next time I saw him, I said to him, I'm really angry at you because you lied to me. And I can't believe you would lie to me and not come to this meeting that we agreed was important and you had great ideas. And his whole demeanor just changed, and his face just went really red and his body tensed, and his energy was like, wow, out there, and I could feel his defensiveness. And then somehow in the moment I was inspired to look at my own anger as I saw his rising, and to look at what was beneath it. And what I discovered was that, that I felt betrayed by my friend. I felt like, I wanted to love him and he wasn't allowing me to love him. I felt really hurt about it. And so I decided to share my feelings with him. And I said, I love you. I trust you. I relish our friendship. And I feel kind of violated by you. And I got emotional, which I know is probably hard for you to believe. But, and then it was like, in that moment, the emotion and the feeling and the anger, and it all just kind of dissipated. And he apologized, and I don't think that he realized until that moment what his friendship meant to me and how valuable he was. And we were able to talk about it and to really agree for what it was we had as a friendship, and to relish the level of the friendship that we had created. I think just me sharing the impact of and sharing my truth and being vulnerable really allowed him to be vulnerable, and we were able to break through and to really be honest with each other. And I really know that we are 100% responsible for our experiences, that we have the power. And I guess the crux of this talk is I want you to understand, for us all to understand, that when there's anger, there's an unmet need. And when there's an unmet need, we need to explore that and discover that and kind of get out of the anger, because when we get in the anger, we're projecting the anger out here, and we're not really looking at what the key issue is, what the transformative idea, concept, spiritual possibility is within us. I'd like to tell you one of my favorite stories. There's a couple who had what they thought was a really honest relationship, well, most of the time. And they've been together for 60 years, right? And one of the agreements that they had early in their relationship, in their marriage, the wife asked the husband never to look at the shoebox that was in the cupboard or in the closet. She said, please don't ask about it, please don't look at it, it's just something that's very private. And so for the entire length of their marriage, he never looked at it until the woman started to get sick. And the doctor told them that she probably wasn't going to live. And so they're kind of going through the details and trying to figure out how things are going to work when she leaves. And she says, honey, why don't you get the shoebox out of the closet? And so he goes and gets it. He brings it to her. And she says, please open it. So he opens the shoebox. And inside the shoebox is $90,000 and 2 dolls. And then the wife says, you know, when you and I were married, my grandmother told me the secret to a happy marriage was to never argue. She told me that if I ever got angry with you, I should just keep quiet and crochet a doll. And the husband was deeply touched. 2 dolls meant that she was only angry with him twice in 60 years. Honey, he said, after, overcoming his emotions, that explains the dolls. But what about all the money? Where did it come from? Oh, that, the wife said, that's the money I made from selling all the dolls. Well, I like the story. However, the woman in the story isn't living in alignment with this talk. She is repressing her anger, has repressed her anger, and hasn't dealt with it. I like the fact that she spent the energy of her anger on crocheting these dolls. However, things might have been a lot different for her if she had come to her husband and investigated her anger, and that they could have talked about it. They could have talked about her needs and what was really going on with her, why she was angry with him, when he came home late for work or whatever it was. Who knows? She might have lived longer if she had expressed her needs, looked beyond the anger, and discovered exactly what was going on in the darkness of her mind. Anger's not a bad thing. It's a signal reminding us that we have an unmet need that desires to be investigated. And by doing so, we can discover honesty. We can discover intimacy with ourselves and with our relationships. And as a result, we can feel safe, we can feel close, we can feel cared for, and we can feel loved. And my affirmation for today is, I am serene. Nothing can disturb the quiet peace of my soul. Say that with me. I am serene. Nothing can disturb the quiet peace of my soul. And let's take a moment and join together in meditation. I invite you to close your eyes. Mm-hmm. And if you're not there, to take this 18-inch journey from your head to your heart. And to go into this place of love. Just to be present to all that you are. That you are the essence of love and light. That you are an amazing, spiritual, heartful being. Breathing into this space. Feeling connected to all the love in your beingness. It's being present. Breathing in and breathing out. And recall a time in your life when you spoke honestly about your feelings to someone. When you really shared from your heart. And just to be with that feeling. Remember the feeling. of closeness, of intimacy, the love. And perhaps even to visualize that person right now. And maybe that person's you. And just hold this person, hold yourself in this light of love. And let's take a few moments just to nurture and nourish this love in the silence. Breathing in and breathing out. And imagine you can send this person a big hug. Imagine that you can embrace yourself with love. Loving your mind, your body, your spirit. Feeling the love. Breathing in and breathing out. And now allow yourself to gently return to this moment, to bring your awareness back here right now. Breathing in and breathing out, and opening your eyes when you're ready. And so it is. Namaste. Thank you for being here today. Well, let's see. I think what I'd like to ask you to do right now is to prepare your contribution to Unity Church of Maui, your donation, and as you do so, to consider the value of what these teachings offer to you. It is our hope that you are more deeply connected to yourself, living in a full and beautiful and loving way. So as you prepare your gifts, either physically or in your mind, as you consider what you will give to Unity today, I invite you to hold your gift, and let's hold our gifts and in our thoughts and physically, and bless them by affirming together our prayer of prosperity, which begins: through a grateful, giving heart, my mind and life overflow with the abundance of God's all-providing, infinite supply. And so it is. Amen. Namaste. And so if you would like to give to Unity Church of Maui, you can write to Unity Church of Maui at 483 South High Street in Wailuku. And you can also go to our website and click on our secure donate button, which is on the first page of our website, which is located at unityonmaui.org. And thank you for contributing to this work that we continue to do in these challenging times. And we keep us in your prayers, as well as our community in the world, for healing and holding the thought that someday soon we'll be able to be back in our beautiful High Street location on Sunday morning. Let's see, I've got just a couple announcements today. Have you ever felt so immersed in a task that you were doing that everything else seemed to fade into the background, that you almost seemed to lose track of time, right? Because you were so much into what you were doing that it was like, wow, your energy's just focused. And I like to call this the flow. Of being in the flow is a place where of high performance, of high productivity, of a feeling of being in control, a feeling of power, a feeling of creativity. You know, psychologists and spiritual teachers are discovering that we can get into this place of flow and a place of creativity where we are just expressing and embracing this power. And what they're discovering is when we are in this place of flow, we experience a whole new level of happiness. So in my talk next week, which I'm titling Getting into the Flow, we'll talk about ways that and processes that you can incorporate into your life to get into the flow and experience the fullness of life and have more happiness. So join us right here next Sunday at 10 o'clock. And also at 11 o'clock today, we have our community Zoom meeting. And we'd love to have you join us for this discussion. We'll talk about this talk, some of the diversity or racism work that we're doing, or whatever is on your mind. And that's happening today, 11 o'clock. And if you want to know how to get to that meeting, you can click on the link in our newsletter or click on the link on our webpage, and that'll bring you right to our meeting today at 11 o'clock. And also you can connect with us on Wednesday at noon for our daily word and meditation. I'll read the daily word and then we will spend a half an hour in meditation. It's a great way to be connected, get connected in the middle of the week, and find some time for meditation. And that link is also in our newsletter and on our webpage. And if you enjoy our services, which we hope you do, you'll find more just like this one on our Unity Church of Maui YouTube page. And we've got a whole bunch of music up there also if you're missing our amazing musicians and their music, and many more talks like this. And that's Unity Church of Maui YouTube. And please subscribe to us while you're there, and you'll know when we post new videos. So I think that about wraps it up today. Thank you for being here. I love you and appreciate you, and I behold the Christ in you and know that we work in a united way on this planet to bring love, peace, and joy to the world. So let's end this time together by praying together the prayer for protection, which begins, the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. So God bless you, mahalo, aloha, and see you next time.
Where I live, they're all raised.